guests. But everyone else joined in. We're very grateful that you've tuned in to make this an atmosphere which is not only conducive to a laboratory that has the best interests of economy in its mind. I would like to just start with some simple things. These are aspects of housing. For all those who are listening in, the opportunity is that you can actually send in your questions. You can write those questions in to the host, as you'll see the host policy circle. If you want, you can just send them to anyone and everyone. That's also okay. We'll view that. I'll come to it as and when I can. What's different about this is that we won't be waiting for questions till the end. A question answer session won't be just till the end for the people who are tuning in. We'll try to make sure that if somebody is talking about a particular context and there's a question related to that context that comes in, we'll try to bring it in if we can, without disrupting the flow of the speaker. That's one. Number two, if you have a question that you'd like to speak up, that's an opportunity we're giving you. But if you feel that you want to simply write it in because it's going to be concise, then that also works for us. So just remember that. For the guests, you're welcome to have presentations of slides if you want, or just speak them out, whatever you like. We like both ways. And without further ado, I'd like to just introduce our guests. We have the legendary Arvind Virmani ji, the chairman of EGROW Foundation, former chief economic advisor. He's going to be looking at macroeconomic policy through this 1.5-hour discussion. Dr. Charan Singh, he's the CEO of EGROW, also a former RBI chair professor, and he'll be looking at some sectors of the economy specifically that he wants to refer to. Ashok Vishandass, director EGROW Foundation, also joins us. He is specifically going to be hopefully looking at the agricultural aspect, but of course, you can jump into any other lane that you might want to. We also have Rattan ji. He's the director of EGROW Foundation, former chief director MHFW, the government of India, and he'll again be focusing a little more on the health aspect, which we all know is incredibly important right now. Colonel Mohindapal Singh, I've spoken to him shortly, a short while back, and he will be looking at the defense side. He is, of course, somebody who's the director of EGROW Foundation and a defense analyst and a PhD in defense studies. So I don't think I'm going to wait anymore. I'll go straight to Arvind Virmani ji. I think we're all trying to get a sense of your big picture takeaways. And I say this after having watched the last three discussions on my previous network from the last 3 years, in which you and Dr. Pranoy Roy had quite a few interesting discussions. So I'm very excited to hear what you have to say, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you. So let me start by saying that, there's often a tendency to go straight into the details of sectors, of interest groups, etc. So what I'm going to do is put the overall perspective, and then depending on the moderator, we can go deeper into any of those issues, before or after other people speak. So broadly, I think I see kind of 4 important underlying themes. The overall message or objective of the budget is clearly what we economists call inclusive growth. Now, question is, how is that to be achieved, and what is the vision of the government, which I see emerging, from what they've done so far and from the budget. So there are basically 4 factors. One is a traditional one, infrastructure, which has been there for a long time, where there was a big step up of 35% in the last budget, and there is another step up of 35% in this budget. So you could say that is not a surprise, but yes, I am still pleasantly surprised by the fact of such a large increase of 35% on top of last year's 35. So the only surprise there is that. That of course everybody talks about, so I won't go into the details of infrastructure, except perhaps to mention that from last year's budget discussions, we had said that the focus should be on construction intensive infrastructure to generate jobs quickly, so that the pandemic effects on the job and employment could be quickly felt. So that remains true today. The second one, I think, is the most important and critical, and it's really coming out flowering, I would say, in the budget, is the digital economy. At EGROW, maybe our CEO will tell you more about it, but we did a India Vision Document 2050, where we said that the digital economy is going to drive both inclusion and growth over the next 5 to 10 years. And I see this vision there right through the budget. I'll just mention very quickly 4 or 5 things. One is telemedicine, they have talked about, which they have initiated over the last year, but that drive continues in recognition of how important that is. They talked about e-education, e-skilling, a new digital university, creation of content. What does that mean? People don't realize that content is completely different. If you're going to use digital education, for example, just to give you a super teacher in a school speaks directly to her students, but when you're the same person would be on digital, you could have an experiment going on and the physics teacher is explaining to you when the experiment is actually being carried out right next to her. Okay, so the digital content is very important for getting the real full benefits of so that has been recognized in the then ag tech, startups in agriculture, a platform for conveying information and extension to agricultural sector there, and startups. So just as a flavor and example, in every sector I see in the budget this underlying digital economy, which is very important from our view, because we feel in the next 5 to 10 years it's going to drive. The third one is green economy, what we call. At EGROW, we've called it the green economy. Here, because of legacy system, it's going to take time to ramp up, but in the next 10 to 15 years, its importance will come out. So first the digital economy, then the green economy after that. Why? Because they are legacy systems. We have so much dependence on coal, for example. So suddenly everything will not be renewable. It will take much longer and new technologies have to be developed. But in 10 or 15 years, this is going to be then another driver of India economy. And finally, just to complete the overview, urbanization. Now, urbanization is tricky because, as you know, urbanization is the responsibility of the states, but actually occurs at the Nagarpalika level. So it is 2 levels removed from the center. So there is a limited amount that the center can do. The states are even not delegating what should be delegated to the Nagarpalika, but the center is trying to find things which are cross-cutting across states. For example, so it has decided to appoint a high-level group which will focus on planning, the details of the planners, etc., how to integrate urban areas, how to finance them and whole. And let me just give you one example from 15 years ago, which shows its importance. People don't recognize how important this is. This was a meeting with, when I was in the Planning Commission, a meeting of secretaries of urban secretaries. And I still remember that the Secretary of Urban Affairs of the UP government said they have a total of 3 planners in the entire state, urban planners, 3 urban planners. I was shocked. Okay, so that is how important this thing is. It may sound like evasion of responsibility that you're just setting up a committee. No, it is critical to urbanization. Sorry, I should have said, why is urbanization important? Because there's going to be a huge increase. That's one of the third drivers of productivity and growth. We look across the world, the developed countries in their phase of development, it was urbanization, urban productivity, which led the growth. So with that, let me conclude my overview. We can go into this and other details after everybody else has spoken.
All right, thank you, sir. Very thoughtful, very succinct. I appreciate that. I have a question, but I'm going to hold it. I just want to remind everyone else who's just tuned in once again that you can ask a question based on an answer by any one guest at any point, and I'll try to bring it in at that point so that we remain in the context of the discussion without having to go to it later. But I want to go to our second guest now.
The question is on these 3 issues. I think I'm told you should ask that question. It's probably better clarification, especially.
Okay, I'll let you be the moderator in this one. You see, the point is, I'll ask that question. I just want you to give us an understanding of the fact that there is a lot of criticism coming about the fact that a lot of that the entire budget actually didn't have anything to say about employment or jobs. In fact, those 2 words were not even mentioned in the budget.
I defer to
so
you. I think we'll come
what
back
we're trying
after
to
the
understand is
agriculture
when
has
you
spoken.
suggest.
You were right. You are the moderator. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. That's all right. Okay. Okay, Dr. Charan Singh, your big takeaways, and I would love for you to focus a little bit more on education.
First of all, I must say, in summary, I like the budget for various reasons. And let me just mention those. First is the country is passing through a very difficult time along with the rest of the world. And this budget has done the following: address the immediate concerns that the country is passing through, and then laid the foundation for the next 25 years to come. The Prime Minister has repeatedly been saying that he's looking at India 2047, and he has said that even in the independence speech, and it was also repeated today by the FM. And I look at that from the angle of the budget presentation that yes, the foundation for the next 25 years are being laid down. When I say foundation, what do I mean? One is, what would the world look like in the next 25 years? And are we ready for it? And our chairman, Dr. Virmani, he has a paper on India 2050. And in that paper at the EGROW website, we have said digital is what will drive the world. And if you look at today's budget presentation, hardly a page, hardly 2 minutes went before she didn't bring in digitization in various aspects of the economy. So we are setting the foundation for India to leapfrog and be a front runner in the next few years. And to me, that's very, very important. The other issue that has been discussed in the last few months is obviously the issue of employment. The pandemic has hit us very hard, and to take care of this pandemic, the government did provide medicines and food free of cost. And Dr. Vishandass and Dr. Rattan will speak about it. But I would like to mention lots of employment was lost. To address the issue of employment, the government has announced, and throughout the budget that's visible, the emphasis on infrastructure. Infrastructure is employment oriented most of the time. It has a multiplier effect that takes the economy forward. And the government said that we are going to do investment which will also crowd in private sector. So employment in infrastructure. Capital expenditure, as Dr. Virmani also mentioned, took a substantial jump. The optical fiber is going to be laid out in the villages, again employment oriented. The hospitality sector for MSMEs have got a special concession, and the ropeways have for tourism. Tourism also has multiplier effect. Railway trains and railway terminals, especially the terminals, I would expect them to have a multiplier effect. And then, of course, urbanization has been mentioned. And then he said in the finance minister's speech, it was said they're going to have the hilly state development in which Himachal, Northeast comes. And then, of course, we know the traditional PLI, which is not only employment oriented, also is export oriented. Now, so the immediate impact of the pandemic is employment, and to address that, issues have been raised. The solutions have been provided. Now, when we have to grow along with the roadmap, we need skilled and educated workforce. Fortunately, India has a very rich demographic dividend at this point of time. How do you engage it? How do you have the best of best education in the country? And that is where I would like to congratulate the FM and the Prime Minister who have spoken about we are going to have TV channels dedicated to education and in different languages and for different standards. Now, 200 TV channels will be on the job. Just imagine how it helps to develop the overall standard of education in the country. And then it spoke about digital university. Now, to me, this means the very best of education will reach the remotest part of the country, and this will increase, improve, raise the standards of education. Now, when it comes to education, normally a gestation period is between 20 to 25 years, when it shows the quality of education bearing on innovation, bearing on the individuals and the country's growth and the rise in patents. Inviting foreign universities to open campuses here, provide courses in those 8 sectors, including mathematics, is simply improving the infrastructure on education. And I think it's a smart move where we have been discussing about missing class teachers, missing blackboards, not having the brick and mortar. It needs huge expenditure, not having the brick and mortar schools. Also, knowing very well the difficulty in the terrain of the country and students moving to their schools. With this innovation of channels in education, inviting foreign universities, having a digital university, I think with one stroke, with the help of technology and digitalization, we are setting the foundation for high quality education in our country. This is the workforce which will be trained and effectively able to produce. And that is where I think the productivity is going to improve significantly in days to come. So therefore, given this situation, I would say the budget has done significantly lot for the immediate and for laying the foundation for the future. Thank you. If I can have a minute more, can I add one thing?
Yes,
I
sir.
would like
Please
to
go ahead.
mention. I would like to mention one point. Look, the issue of fiscal performance, fiscal management has been very important. And in this budget, I have noticed something which summarizes the fiscal performance is the fiscal deficit. And if you look at the trend of fiscal deficit from 2008-9, you look at it how we have been trying to bring it down. But immediately in 2021, when the pandemic hit us, the fiscal deficit went through the roof, and rightly, and should have been supported. The fiscal deficit was nearly 9.2%. Last year, the things were under control. GST has been doing very good performance, and therefore the fiscal deficit was in the less than 7. Even this year, the government has been very transparent, clearly mentioning that the fiscal deficit we target 5%, but would be in the range of 6+%. The point that I'm trying to make is the government is alert to the fiscal responsibility, not indulging in fiscal profligacy, adhering to fiscal discipline, but then aware of the concerns of the economy and therefore not shying of recording high fiscal deficit. Thank you for this extra time.
Okay, sir. Just a quick question, and if you could keep an answer that is brief. The budget, has it earmarked enough to meet this ambition that you talked about to improve education? That's the question.
Yes. Once we shift to, I'll in the next round I'll give you the data. Don't have it offhand right now with me. But I would like to mention that the very fact that we are shifting to the televisions, and we are going for digitalization, the traditional cost that goes in setting up the infrastructure for high quality education need not be incurred now. This will happen in a far more simplified way, but far more sophisticated and cost effective.
Got it. Okay, that's very helpful. Okay, I just want to take it now to Ashok Vishandass ji. And this is the sentimental background. And at some point during the discussion, we'll talk about what the Congress has said and the politics of all of this. We will come to that a bit later. We want to just first understand each perspective. But this is also coming from the sentiment that there was this entire year, there was this farmer crisis, that was basically living room discussion. And you don't hear enough, some would argue, from this budget. So Ashok ji, with that sentiment in mind, what would you say about the agricultural aspect of what was said by Nirmala ji?
Thank you, Amitoj. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. Agriculture, the FM has provided quite good things for the agriculture. Let us appreciate that agriculture is the life pillar of economy. It contributes over 18% of the GVA and 46% of the employment. Having said that, I believe that it has a potential to contribute about 7 to 8% in next 25 years in the growth rate, and there is enough. Now, what we need, farmers need broadly two things: getting the markets right and getting the prices right. Now, she has provided. Now let us give a small examples what is contained in the budget. Now, connecting the rivers, Ken Berwa River. Now it will create enough irrigation facility. That is point one. Now along the Ganges, 5 kilometers of organic farming. There is a lot of scope, because we have to see, traditionally our emphasis was on tonnage centric. That means emphasis was to increase the production. Doesn't matter what is the value of that production. Now we are moving away from the production centric or tonnage centric to the income centric, because organic now see, on the other day, the HM, the Home Minister, made a statement in Gujarat, just to give an example, that there is likely to be increased by 50% of the cancer patient in Gujarat because of the chemical fertilizer. So the policy statement was that they had to decrease the chemical fertilizer and to be substituted by natural farming. That is point two. Now, point three, the minimum support price has been assured, and she has given the figure of rupees 2.37 lakh crore for procurement. So she wants to assure the farmers that whatever you produce, and let me remind the viewers that it is an open-ended. That means whatever the farmers produce, that will be procured by the government. There is no upper limit, there is no cap or cap, nothing of that. So this is also positive, though it's very clear. And government has abided by its commitment that the MSP will be at least 1.5 times of the cost. So that means it assures 50% the return on the cost. That is one. And it has also been made very clearly in the budget of today that they will reduce the dependence of oilseed, edible oils from other countries. And she didn't mention about the country, but just to for the benefit of the viewer, mostly about more than 60% we import from Malaysia and Indonesia of our edible oil. Now, as the income rises, the farmers or the consumers, they depend on very canned food, which requires higher consumptions of the edible oil. So our consumption of edible oil is going to increase because of many reasons. I will not go into those details, but suffice to say that increase in edible oils consumption is also to be made, and she has provided enough. And we have to move from to high value farming by organic, because that fetches a high value. That is one. And second, the animal husbandry, the milk and milk product, meat and other things. So it will boost the growth rate, and I am sure. And let us also remind the readers, viewers, that during the pandemic, agriculture was the only sector of the economy which registered the positive growth compared to the negative in many other sectors. So our agriculture, Indian agriculture, is very resilient, and both in terms of its contribution in the GVA, that is one, and in employment, and it uses a lot of water, fresh water. Over 80% of fresh water is used in agriculture. So the emphasis is to move away water guzzling crops to more, which to the crops which consumes less water but carries high value. So beekeeping, and there are many other sectors. So and next point is about the PM Gati Shakti program, which also helps the agriculture. So this contains 7 engines of the growth. This I have enough scope for the basic primary sector, that is the agriculture, in the budget, and therefore a large number of farmers and the people will benefit from this this particular budget. This is my initial remark, and then I will come back.
Okay. Once again, I have many questions, but I'm holding them off patiently. It takes a lot out of me, I can tell you that. I would like to go to Dr. Rattan now. For me personally, again, coming from the sentiment of what many are calling the third wave, Omicron, there's this feeling that more should have been done for the health frontline workers, and that's not happened. With that in mind, your takeaway with health as the major subject that you'll be focusing on.
If you talk to any health expert, he will say that there should be more allocation for the health, and it should be increased to some 2% of the GDP. Anyway, but we are far behind that number. I also feel that providing only the money is not the only solution. The money provided should be effectively used. Anyway, so with this, I would say that if we take roughly into account, the total allocation to health sector is around 90,000 crores. These 90,000 crores, around 83,000 crore is for Department of Health and Family Welfare, 3,200 for Department of Health Research, and around 3,000 Ministry of Ayush, that is Ayurveda, etc. So in this main increase of around 6,000 crores has gone to Department of Health and Family Welfare. So this is the overall allocation within the health sector, but there are many related sectors. I will come to those later. So within the health, we see that National Health Mission, Prime Minister Jan Arogya Yojana, which is Ayushman Bharat, where some 50 crore population has been covered for up to for 5 lakh hospitalization charges. Then AIDS control, then Prime Minister Swasthya Suraksha Yojana. This is the Yojana which the fund of which is used for establishing new All India Institute of Medical Sciences. So all these schemes are continuing. In addition to this, last year many infrastructure activities were proposed in the budget. So for that, Ayushman Bharat Infrastructure Mission has also been launched with an allocation of around 6,000 crores. So these are the overall. But in this budget, specifically announced schemes were the Ayushman Bharat Digital Health Mission. So this is for creating an ecosystem where digital registry of healthcare providers and health facilities will be available, and also a unique health identity for each person with the consent framework, and also universal access to health facilities. So this is one scheme which was specifically mentioned in the budget. Another thing was National Tele Mental Health Program. So under this program, network of 23 telemedicine health centers of excellence, they will be interlinked. And NIMHAS is the National Institute of Mental Health at Bangalore. It will be the nodal center, and NIIT Bangalore, they will provide the technical support, IT support. So these were the two things which were specifically mentioned, but related to the health are also other sectors like schemes like Har Ghar Nal Se Jal. This is rural drinking water supply. So, and next 2 years, I think 3.8 crore households will be covered, and allocation of 60,000 crores has been made to this activity.
Right.
Then there are schemes of the women and child development like Mission Shakti, which is empowerment of women. Mission Vatsalya, this is child protection and child welfare activities. Then Saksham Anganwadi, where nutrition activities take place. So a lot of money has been given to this. This includes 3,000 crore to Mission Shakti, around 1,500 to Mission Vatsalya, then 20,000 crore to Saksham Anganwadis, and 10,200 crores to Ocean. So under this Saksham Anganwadis, 2 lakh Anganwadis to be upgraded to Saksham Anganwadis. What are these Saksham Anganwadis? I was trying to look into. So these to provide some smart type of education, initial education to the children, and also creches. So these are the activities. These Anganwadis will be strengthened. And in addition to this, Swachh Bharat Mission, which is around 9,500 crores. So that amount has also been provided. So these are social determinants of health. All these Har Ghar Nal Se Jal nutrition activities and these sanitation activities. I think this is the overall the health budget which I have.
I will ask you one thing.
Yeah.
The one aspect,
Yes.
just one aspect in one line that pleasantly surprised you the most. Pleasantly surprised you. I'll come back to what was not pleasant.
I think not much surprise, but I feel there are many activities those are going on in the health sector. Those activities should be implemented in an effective way. So
Okay, we'll come back.
That is the thing. I think this is okay. Yeah.
Okay, I'll come to implementation. First, we're just trying to get a sense of where the money's been allocated, and you've summarized that very beautifully. Colonel Mohindpal Singh, a pleasure. This does seem to be a bit exciting for the defense, industry in a sense, because it's all about Atmanirbhar. Once again, the question out there is implementation, and we will come to that. But are you pleased with the fact that there is this dependence on localized industry that has been hinted, clearly more than hinted actually? What do you feel about that?
Thank you very much, Amitoj. You see, defense budgets actually traditionally have been linked to the strategic doctrines and the geopolitics. And in India, we as a country, we have 2 very active borders. In spite of this pandemic year, last 2 years being very difficult, I'm happy to say that the defense allocations are intact. Rather, they have increased at a pretty reasonable pace, where we need to upgrade our defense forces in terms of a lot of hardware, and the defense budget is likely to keep in mind these things. Now, on 20th January, I'd like to put on record, I was speaking on the SOCHM platform, and I made 3-4 recommendations. That was a shadow budget. And I was very happy to see that 2 of them found mention in the finance minister's speech. One being that why don't we invite the private sector in the R&D part? Because if we have to at a later stage, see, weapon development doesn't happen in a jiffy. It takes a long time. If we have to develop our own guns, if we have to develop our own fighter aircraft, if we have to develop our own submarines, it takes about a decade and a half or a decade at least to plan. And of course, DRDO is doing a fantastic job. But if you bring in the private sector, that would augment the R&D. All developed countries, private sector is very nicely dovetailed into this R&D. So I was very happy to listen to this, that the focus is that they are going to invite the private sector. This was one of the very positive takeaways today. And one more aspect which I had again mentioned on this 20th January ASSOCHAM platform was India is one of the largest importers of weapons, of military hardware in the world, with 9.5% of the total hardware import is being done by India. This present government is moving in a very serious way towards Atmanirbhar Bharat. And today's announcement was a welcome one, with almost Finance Minister saying that 68% of the capital procurement will be now from the domestic industry. That will really give a fillip to the domestic industry. And with this, I would also like to link that the negative lists which are coming up from the Ministry of Defense, which came in last year also, a list of 108 items, which included some missiles and other lists, which we intend doing it on our own, is going to be a very, very positive step, not only in Atmanirbhar, but making the defense industry, self-reliant, so that our imports decrease. Maybe later on, in case the discussion goes, I will talk of how procurement from foreign vendors is so expensive when compared to what we develop on our own.
Yeah.
To open up the discussion, I would feel that a 552 lakh 5166 crore budget with a 10% increase from the previous allocation of 4.78 is a welcome one, and one which is required and give a fillip to the ongoing programs which the Defense Ministry is undertaking.
Did you expect it?
Well, frankly speaking, I did not. But seeing this allocation, I think all the defense analysts, they would feel very happy from two angles. One is that the government is focused in, as far as the border securities are concerned, because we need a lot of equipment, we need a lot of technology, and technology also comes at a good price. So good allocation would mean that yes, we are going to be able to guard our borders really well.
Okay, I have a question which I will come back to. Okay, and I'm going to give you some time to think about it. The question is very simple. India is grappling between having tradition of taking weapons from Russia, where the US is trying to influence India now. And this is one way of dealing with this by becoming Atmanirbhar. How does that factor into this? I'll come back to that, but I first want to give an opportunity to those who've actually raised the question. The first question that I want to go to is, and perhaps you can cushion it in Virmani ji, because this is slightly interesting as a question which is specific, but I want you to answer the question and then go on to the question of the state of the economy right now, based on the economic survey and the budget. So just give us another macro picture of that. Does this budget in that sense basically, take forward our economy, keeping in mind where it has been? Is it enough for that, or will it still be a sluggish growth? Realistically speaking, based on the fact that we've seen in the past also, I think 5 out of the 7 previous budgets also had a situation where, for example, in terms of disinvestment, they were not able to meet their targets, the last 5 out of the 7. So the state of the economy, give us the macro picture. But there's a question for you, which has come from Nimandeep. And Nimandeep asks what the budget for senior citizens healthcare is, and the lower rate of interest in banks. How do senior citizens and their financial assets remain protected? So, Virmani ji.
Sir, please unmute.
Yes. Could you please unmute, sir?
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. So I'm going to mix in your first question, which I didn't answer, jobs and growth, because that's the macro picture, right?
Yes.
We generally have less data on jobs, but now we have some which I can actually give, which is very pertinent. So, most people don't understand that GDP actually is exactly equal to income. And they talk about as if GDP is going up and income is going down, or vice versa. That's just illogical. That it's an identity. Okay. So income, if you take all wages and profits, income is exactly equal to GDP. This is not something I'm making up. It's an identity wherever you go in the world. So what does it show us? So the key point I want to make is that GDP and jobs are intimately linked. And I'm just going to give you some data which is now available from the PLFS surveys for the first wave of the COVID, which is till January, March, the last quarter of the 2021 year. So what you see, the picture is that GDP growth, the job growth or job decline lags GDP growth. So one very pertinent number, the GDP in the first quarter when we had the first wave declined by 24.4%, but jobs only declined by 15.3%. That means they lagged. So if you go forward, I won't give you all the numbers, but if you come to the last quarter, the GDP had recovered to 1.6%, but jobs were still minus 1.4% compared to a year ago. What does that mean? It lags. So when GDP growth recovers, income recovers. It's an identity, okay? And jobs recover. Okay? That's the short-term link, which is very clear from this data now. 4 quarters of data, but it is lagging. So certainly, if we go forward into the second wave where we don't have the full data, and the third wave, there will be a lag. There will be again an effect of the second wave. Both GDP and jobs go down. They'll recover, but jobs will recover more slowly. So that's certainly true. But to say that somehow everything has changed and jobs will not be there is just absurd in my view. Having said that, that's a cyclical phenomena from a trend phenomena. You have to distinguish between the effect of the pandemic and long term. I take your point. You were talking about the decline in growth rate and the trend growth in GDP and therefore of jobs. Okay. So I have that question. I'm not ignoring it. Okay.
Right, sir.
So how do we address that? So again, Charan will back me up. We did a whole bunch of research in EGROW Foundation showing that this pandemic must be utilized by changing the basic structure of the economy. If we had not done this, we would be on that declining path, which you very correctly have pointed out. But what has happened is an amazing amount of reforms since starting with September 2019, the corporate tax reform. There are reforms in every sector of the economy. Okay, wherever there were controls, government is going systematically on the product side. Services, just mentioned drones, which our friend Dr. we can talk about on defense. But every sector of the economy, space, let me tell you, I was surprised that they would free up atomic energy, but that was freed up. Space sector was freed up, atomic energy was freed up, so on, systematically. Then at least they attempted. Agriculture, let's not get back into the old debate, but they tried. Okay, maybe it was not perfect, maybe it was whatever. But then the side of the factor markets, labor, the IBC, and every aspect, the bad bank, and so on. So why am I confident that we are going to have a recovery going back to around 7.45 on a trend line basis? Okay, now I'm addressing your trend problem. I think that thing is over because we've had these structural reforms. And I speak from experience of being involved in the 90s reforms and the 2000 reforms or non-reforms. Okay, so that is the reason. Now, there will be a certain lag. I said the jobs are lagging, and that's the last point I want to make in response to your specific question, is that infrastructure is the key there. And what I call construction-intensive infrastructure. Everybody knows that construction creates the largest number of jobs. There's no dispute about it. Everybody agrees. So focus on construction-intensive. But let us not forget that, it's very nice. People who live in Delhi worry about the environment. But in November and December, we shut down construction in the whole of the national capital region. We shut down certain energy production. So you couldn't use in Manesar, where they have small industries which were using coal or certain thing, they could not produce. Okay, so everything has a cost. We must keep this. We have to balance. As a society, we have to balance. But this is the reason why I think the GDP and jobs will recover is because of the reforms. Of course, implementation is an issue you said we should discuss. We can discuss.
Okay. Sir, did you want to address that specific question by Nimandeep Singh? what the budget for senior citizens healthcare and also perhaps more importantly for you, the lower rate of interest in banks. How do senior citizens and their financial assets remain protected? That was the question.
Yeah, if Rattan wants to take up, because senior citizens is a health issue, but
okay.
and really finances Charan, I don't know, but
okay,
so
that's fine. That's fine. So I have a question for you as a clarification. You explained how GDP and job decline, is connected, and that this lagging situation is there. But is there evidence from what you said that jobs?
This is hard evidence. I have a table right in front of me on my Excel file, which is.
If I could just finish my question. If I could just finish my question, is there evidence that jobs will grow if there is a push in infrastructure that is implemented correctly?
So evidence with connected infrastructure. There is tons of evidence. You ask anybody who's in construction or infrastructure, if you've been watching TV, every single person one has heard will tell you that construction is the labor-intensive sector. Besides the contact services, which have a problem of the virus, there's a fear. I will not go out to a restaurant today because I'm afraid. So that is not a question you can solve by injecting demand. I just don't want to go out there, right? I'm just giving me as an example. So as far as infrastructure is concerned, construction is absolutely, there is no dispute anywhere in the world that construction is labor intensive. It's labor intensive in South Korea. It's labor intensive in US relative to their own economy. And it's definitely labor intensive in India. So I don't think there is even any kind of a doubt on that.
Okay, so just again, zooming out, we've talked about this in the past. You've talked about this several times. The government keeps talking about less government, more governance. The government here seems to be getting bigger every year. And also, this supply side stimulus that we've been talking about. There is an economic sensitivity towards farmers and the jobless. And when you don't give them, for example, a cash benefit, then the sensitivity that they are facing, it doesn't come through. And I understand the connection between pushing infrastructure and that will result in what you actually want, income for the lowest strata, the lowest in the pyramid. I get all of that. But is it worth the risk that implementation will not happen and therefore you could be in a complete, quandary completely?
So now we are talking about implementation of infrastructure. I've not understood your full question, but let me take that up, and if there's something more, I can take it. As far as implementation of capital, I just heard, I have not looked at the exact data, but I just heard one of the secretaries give the exact numbers. He said that capital budget was, I don't know, was supposed to be 16 lakh something, and 15 lakh 50,000 or something has been spent. So implementation is occurring. It was disturbed. Let's not confuse. In the height of the lockdown and the coming out of it in the first COVID wave, there was clearly a problem. Everything shut down. People again forget that 50 to 60% of the economy was completely shut.
Understood that. Yes.
Yeah. So construction couldn't go on. I mean, infrastructure couldn't go on. So leaving that aside, the implementation is okay. It may not be 100%, but 89%, 90% is kind of all we can expect from government projects.
So my question then is that because there has been this Delta wave and then Omicron, we have no control over the number of waves that are going to come and the number of variants that are going to come. Keeping that future as a possibility alive in this conversation, wouldn't it have been better to just have a direct transfer to the poor?
So okay, that's good. You ask about a direct transfer.
Yeah.
I think the biggest program of direct transfer is not direct. It's connected to the food. I think it is a targeted program of providing free food to all covered by the national food program. What's it called? NSP or something. Vishandass can correct the name. Kya naam hai uska?
You'll have to unmute yourself, Vishandass ji.
Anyway,
NFSA.
Yeah.
NFSA.
NFSA. Right. Thank you. So this is the most well-targeted and amazing program. We are actually, I can't tell you, give you the whole paper now, but the results of the paper will be out. We are calculating the impact of the offsetting of this food program on poverty. Okay, we will give you an exact number in two weeks' time. But I can tell you this, that this was an amazing program which has offset much of the decline in income of the poorest people.
Right.
Virtually 100% of the poorest and less, obviously, of the upper income as you go up the ladder. But that program has worked. I must say that we never thought of it. And I can admit, in EGROW, we proposed many policies which actually were used and were good. But this is one thing was completely, the government thought of it itself and is one of the most successful programs, I will say. You'll find out once we complete our paper.
Right. Okay. In short, I feel like you agree with the supply side formula rather than going with the direct transfer formula. And I want to just go to Dr. Charan Singh.
Just to summarize, just summarize that the supply side means policy reform, and then which was mostly earlier, plus these new programs. If you take those two together, yes, then I think that's the right way to go. Absolutely.
I'd be interested in knowing if anyone disagrees with him. And if anyone wants to talk, please just unmute yourself and speak. And I'm talking about the guests, of course. But Dr. Charan Singh ji, while you can react to anything that's been said already, please go ahead with that. Return to that context. I want you to also just touch a little bit about this conversation regarding how there's been no income tax and the fact that, we're looking at a situation where the Congress, for example, is calling it a zero-sum game. And I really want to bring that in only because while this may be a policy discussion, it's about perception management. If there are two types of conversations going around, where the BJP and the government is saying one thing and the Congress is saying this with P. Chidambaram as the face of that, you have to add a certain amount of credibility to what is being said and leaves the viewer slightly confused. So break that confusion for us. And you might want to unmute yourself. Sorry.
So the expenditure on education, when I said the digital part, the expenditure on education is significantly large. It was in the revised estimates 88,000 crore, but in the budget estimate for the next year, it is 1,04,000 crore. So that means there's a substantial jump in the expenditure on education. So I think if the government is thinking in terms of a digital university and TV channels to do the education, they have the wherewithal to do it. I'm also sure that the state governments are going to jump into this because they have said that they're going to do it in regional languages. So that's also very important. The other point that you mentioned, Amitoj, was on security, social security. I must mention that the Manrega expenditure of the government has been very, very high. If you look at the data, 98,000 crore has gone, and I remember 2-3 years back when I was doing it, it was around 54,000 crore. And then it went up to 1,11,000 crore in 2021 and 98,000 crore in 21-22. That's in a sense of social security that has been provided. This is over and above the free food that has been provided and free medicines.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you because I just want you to correct me. My understanding was that Manrega was the budget this time has been reduced.
No, see, if you look at the budget estimates, it was 73,000 crore for 21-22. And finally, in the revised estimates, it's 98,000 crore.
Okay, go ahead. Right? Sorry.
So if you look at the amount that has been incurred in 21-22, it is 98,000 crore. Now, if you say it has been reduced, I agree from 2021. In 2021, it was 1,11,000.
Yes. So my question is this the time for that? When you've had, the people who need it the most, and I know there's a separate discussion for the fact that if there are people who actually need it, they'll reach out for it and then they'll increase the budget. I believe that's the way it is. But even then, to make them go through that process at a time like this, is it fair?
No, it's nothing like going through the process. As they feel that there is lots of employment being generated through the Manrega, they keep extending it. So it's as simple as that. It's sort of
that's correct. Let me just add, sorry to interrupt, but that is how Manrega was conceived. I was there, though I didn't approve of all the features which went into it, but we were there. We had proposed the original version of the Manrega, not necessarily the one which is there now. But the idea was that it's unlimited. So you can question the estimate of the government. Okay, they are misestimating the requirement. Okay, that's a valid issue. But the concept is that if there is bigger demand, they will allocate more. If there's less demand, they'll allocate less.
Got it.
It's pretty elastic. It's like a balloon. It keeps expanding wherever it is required, and that's substantial. And the health also was being taken care of. So on one hand, when we say that there's lack of social security in India, I always say that there is a backup mechanism which is very solid and strong. Rather, one of the arguments that has come up with, and I think that's very good, is that why not have Manrega for the urban areas, which can be considered and the government may consider it. So I'll not be surprised. But given that there is this Manrega, which is providing a solid support, and lots of migrant labor which has gone back from the urban back into the rural areas, they are taking advantage of it. I must also mention from the angle of employment, one is Manrega, but then we have been saying that construction is and infrastructure is employment oriented, and it has a multiplier effect, and then ancillary units come up and MSMEs come up, and MSMEs and ancillary units are generally again employment oriented. I was looking at the budget on the the rural drinking water mission, and you'll be surprised in the rural drinking water mission, which is to my mind laying the taps, laying the pipes, is again lots of employment oriented. The budget has gone from 10,000 crores to 45,000 crores in the current year, and 60,000 crore in the next year. So again, to my mind, that's pumping money into the system where employment gets generated. Your question on the interest rates on senior citizens.
Yes.
I wanted to address that. I had also mentioned that in the pandemic, and one of the suggestions we had given to the government, that in the pandemic, lots of people have lost their jobs, of course, and we understand food and medicines are being provided. Manrega is being provided. We understand that. But in case the old age pension can be enhanced. Now, you know that old age pension is provided both by the central government and the state government. The amounts are not very large, they are small, but we had suggested if it can be enhanced. And we know that at the old age, the money just does not get squandered away in liquor or things like that. Elderly are bound to spend money within the family, and it be distributed between children and grandchildren. At least the food part is taken care. But then, as Dr. Virmani mentioned, the National Food Security Act has taken care of the food part, so that's not a very big concern. But the interest rate in the banks for senior citizens is a certain percentage higher than what is given to others. Now, please remember that you can only give that much as possible given your kitty and given your strength. The banking system can also only provide that much, and if the banking sector is not able to do the credit in an aggressive way, deposits become a burden. And the money is sitting idle. Of course, it can be invested in overnight treasury bills or in government securities, but government securities also get you about 5 to 6%. That's all. So therefore, the schemes are there. The sort of automatic stabilizers are there. But then when the pandemic happens and the whole ocean level goes down, the ships do get stuck in shallow waters, and therefore one has to understand that, one has to grant it. One more point I want to make is, when the pandemic started in March 2020, most of us, not all, most of us thought it is a 1 month or a 2 month phenomenon. But as it panned out, it is a never-ending phenomenon.
I never thought that.
It is a never-ending phenomenon. And then I was amongst the very few who said that, look, let's look at the Spanish flu. It came in 5 waves, and the first wave was X, the second was 5X, the third was 2X, and then it sort of withered away. But it comes in waves, and therefore the uncertainty that was there you could not use all the ammunition, particularly in a poor country like ours. The advanced countries could give large stimulus and still get away, but in a country like ours, we had to give very measured doses and appropriate doses. We could not overdo it. Of course, we did not want to underdo it because it will lead to casualties. As Dr. Virmani was mentioning, and I totally agree with that, the contact services closed down. Many employment orientation, as he gave a stark example of total construction lockdown in Delhi, has large impact. Of course, reverse migration took place. So the point that I'm trying to make is that the government's fiscal stimulus, government strategy, government support to private consumption has to be viewed in the context of the uncertainty that is prevailing. And the government has to keep some gunpowder dry, as in when the situation emerges, it has to use some resources at that point. So that's the point I wanted to make.
Very well put, sir.
The last point I want to make is that even now, there are people who are saying, why don't you give this concession? Why was that concession not given? I was saying, why not give enhance the old age pension? But please remember, the gross fiscal deficit is again absolutely on the margin. Around 7% is very high. Gross fiscal deficit, not a very fashionable term in that sense. Whatever you borrow, you have to pay interest. And if you look at the interest expenditure, that is bulging. And therefore, an interest expenditure is not only for one day. Repaying the loans is not an easy thing when the government borrows. You borrow for 7 years, you've committed yourself to 7 years of interest payment. So therefore, you can only extend so much tax concessions or social security, keeping in mind the long-term view too. Because at the end of the day, if you borrow excessively, it's fashionable. Let me, one last point I want to make, and that will make the story clear. Look, I want to congratulate the government. This was a time when they were entering. They've already announced elections in 5 states. It is not a populist budget. Had anybody else been there, it's very, very seductive to give a very populist budget. They didn't, because there are hard realities biting them, and they're aware of those hard realities. And one should respect the government that despite such an opportunity available to them, they have not done it. So that means the fiscal responsibility is being carefully dispensed. One should congratulate.
Okay, interesting you say that. I just have a few comments to make. The first, the Prime Minister gave a short speech, and he's going to elaborate more on that tomorrow when he speaks. And he mentioned that this is Janta ke Paksh mein. At first glance, what I'm understanding from every comment that's been made so far is that while it may not look like that, because this concept of a handout or a populist budget doesn't seem to have been done in a direct way, but in a more reasoned way, where you do it through the use of giving all the power or the monetary impetus into the industry and hoping that will result in making sure that those who need it the most will get it. I understand that. And in addition to that, sir, there's several questions that are coming in right now from all those who are listening. I just have one thing. Which one of you will take a question on cryptocurrency? Okay, Charan Singh ji, I'll come to you. But I want to first go to the questions that were first asked. I have several questions, but I'm holding them off because I want to give everyone a chance. This is a question for you. What I'd request everyone to do is try to keep it short so that we can get in more questions, the answers. So this is from Resmi, Dr. Resmi. Other than the announcement of digitalization of classes, where is the allocation for that? If we factor in inflation, the allocation might be that it remains the same or declines from last year's allocation. Dr. Charan Singh, if that question is clear to you.
Yeah, that is true. As I said, you can only expand as much as your sheet. You can't extend beyond it. Within that sheet, you have to set up the priorities, and I think the intentions are clear. I'm sure they have said they're going to crowd in private investment. They take the first steps, and many other private sector TV channels may jump in.
Okay. It is already observed, she asked the second question, it is already observed that the digital classrooms didn't even help students who have good supplementary support system. Hence, how do we assume it is going to help those lakhs of children who are on the verge of dropping out?
Exactly. That is why the TV channels. Because the complaint was that many students in this country cannot afford a smartphone. That is fair enough. And that is why the TV channels.
Okay. All right. Resmi, you have another question, but I want to switch to somebody else and what their question is. And again, sir, because you're on, we'll quickly come to you. This is from Swati Ghotale. This is a question that says the government issued cryptocurrencies as well as a 30% tax increase. That's actually not factually correct, Swati. They've not issued cryptocurrencies. What they're saying is that they'll come up with a CBDC, which is a central bank digital rupee, in a sense, and they will charge a 30% tax on any income that you gain from any transaction. And she says it appears to be incompatible. Sir, is that right or wrong?
Well, to my mind, that's a very smart strategy that the government has done. For 7-8 years, the country has been struggling with cryptocurrency. The Reserve Bank said, don't go there. It was challenged in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, no, let's go there. The Reserve Bank governor came on board and went on record to say, this is dangerous. The country, dear countrymen, this can burn your fingers. We are an emerging country.
Okay, I have a counter question though. Here's the thing. It appears disingenuous because you're not coming up with a regulation. You're delaying that. You are, in a sense, having GST tax rates on these exchanges. But at the same time, you're saying, oh, well, we want to collect tax, but we don't necessarily want to regulate it. And then all the same in the press.
Charan, let me come in here.
Yeah.
Charan has forgotten, but we had a professor of who was an expert, who was a former BIS
chief economist,
division chief, and also a professor now. So the important thing for people to understand is two distinctions. One is blockchain technology is a great thing. Cryptocurrency is not. Cryptocurrency is not a big innovation. Blockchain is going to be a huge innovation and will invent many things in future. But cryptocurrency is a private currency, which is distinct from a public currency. What the government is saying, the public currency we will set up. The RBI will introduce a public digital currency. If they are private digital currencies like crypto, they will be taxed. And what is the basis? That's why I brought in the professor. Just one more sentence. The professor told us that he has studied the history of private currencies, and that's what the best thing to do. It's better not to ban them, but tax them.
Okay. All right.
The other way of looking at the tax, in addition to what the chairman said, and I totally agree with what he said, I would say when you tax a commodity, you in a way deter people and say you are being watched and you are on record. And we are telling you, don't burn your fingers, because later on you'll come back to us and say, save us. So I think the government has done a very good thing, and writes in a way it's cautioning people, guiding people to stay away something from this.
Okay. All right. I have several questions once again, but I'm holding them off. I just want to switch to Professor Ashok. Explain this to me. How has the government managed to not assuage the agricultural sector when they have an election coming up and you had this farmer crisis that made them look, well, bad because the Prime Minister himself apologized? How have they managed to do this?
Well, I think the agriculture, basically, there are many issues, and my study and the government knows it, but it's not coming on the record. The thing was that government is very clear that whatever was the protest, it was not by the genuine farmers. There were external forces, there are certain politics. So,
but he apologized in the end.
Yes, he did, but that was strategic. That was strategic because he had no other way to come out of that mess, if I can use it. Now, let me also add, and my information says there were many things. For example, let me be very blunt on this, and I have very solid information. I'm privy to this. There were pressure from a country like China because there were certain things that the multinational were going out. Now they wanted to paint India as if it's not the very preferred destination. So they were pumping the money through certain elements, and they want to put that India is not the safe destination. Now those were the concerns which made India and no less than the Prime Minister to withdraw. But essentially, those three pieces of legislation were very good for the farmers. And let me also add that if it was not because of external forces and extraneous regions, how the agriculture registered the positive growth if farmers were protesting? How you can explain that 2.5 states, Haryana, Punjab, and half of UP, every other state was happy with those. They did not show any protest. So this is not purely economics. This was something beyond it, which we perhaps could not see what lies underneath. So I can't say more than that, but suffice to say that farmers know in the heart of it, and the government knows who are the actors and who wants to do what. So let us. I would keep.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But very quickly, for you, what's your greatest worry with regards to agriculture and the budget that's been allocated to it?
See, the greatest worries are few things. For example, I would have loved that. See, there is a disguised unemployment in this. For example, 46% of the labor force contribute about 18% of GVA. That clearly shows that our labor productivity is very low. We have to upscale the skills of the farmers. I did some study in Gujarat some time back. Farmers at that time were being paid 108 rupees a day as wages. Some diamond merchants, they took out that labor out of agriculture. They made just 3 weeks training, and their wage rose to 500 rupees. So that means around 4.5 times of this. Plus, they were saved from scorching heat. They were provided fans when they were polishing the diamond. So we have to make it much more semi-skilled, if not the skilled one. That is point one, when we have to skill the farmers and bring out the labor, because my understanding is the labor force in agriculture should not be more than 20% or 25% as against. So we have to withdraw the labor so that agriculture becomes much more productive.
Okay.
That is not happening. Plus subsidy on urea. I was expecting. Let us be very clear. Farmers are using the urea in particular more than at least 3 times what is technically recommended for this, and we have to rationalize the subsidy for urea vis-a-vis the other two nutrient, potash and phosphorus. So it has to be on per hectare basis. There must be some region. I have not understood why they don't want to switch over from this. So the subsidy plus procurement. Now the assured procurement of rice and wheat, and we are not doing anything on the high value. So these are my worries. And in the years to come, the cost of capital is going to be much low compared to the cost of labor. Therefore, there has to be some emphasis on the technology and availability of, for example, custom hiring center. So you have to have a kind of Uberization of machinery. So we have to do the mechanization of agriculture farming, which is not taking place in abundance. It is happening in a small pocket and small places.
Okay, got it. I'll leave you with a question, sir, that you can think about. This is a question from Amit Singh Kokhar. I hope I pronounced that correctly, the last name. What is in agricultural sector? I'll leave you with that. You think about it, and I want to switch to another question. We'll come back to you for that answer. But Rattan Chandji, there's some experts who are kind of disappointed with the health sector allocation. They are disappointed that it's just a 0.2% rise in the fund allocation. Is that justified, that disappointment?
Actually, I have said earlier I don't believe in pumping the money. Whatever is given to you should be effectively utilized. So what is the main thing? Health, for health, two things are important. One is the preventive services, which the public health system should do, so that the people don't fall sick. And if they fall sick, they should be able to get free treatment or treatment with the minimum price. So the important thing is to reduce out-of-pocket expenditure. For this, run the government health centers efficiently so that people can go there and avail almost free services. Other thing is this Prime Minister Jan Arogya Yojana, because hospitalization that takes lots of cost is too high, and that may drive people to the poverty trap.
Okay.
So implement the Prime Minister Jan Arogya Yojana efficiently, because we saw that although the budget was around 6,000 crores, only 2,681 crore were spent.
Yeah.
And in this year, 7,857 crore has been kept. So the thing is, that means more and more people there may be some guidelines are such that people are not able to make use of these use of this scheme. So guidelines should be simplified so that people can make use of this scheme. Then you see there are many other things. Under the National Health Mission, free diagnostic, free transport, and free medicine initiative has been launched. So at the government hospitals, this should be effectively implemented. In addition to this,
do you think they will be? Do you
Yeah.
think they will be effectively implemented, going to the past record where you yourself said the money wasn't spent?
Yeah, actually, this is being done through the state governments. So they are, I think, trying their best to implement this. The main thing is, supply of medicines. So many states, they have, I think, established these medical services corporation, where they buy in bulk so that it is not that costly, and they supply to their centers. So they are taking steps in the right direction. Then if you see these around 8,000 Jan Aushadhi Kendras, this is also Prime Minister's scheme. If you buy a medicine from outside, it may be 100 rupees, but if you go to this Jan Aushadhi Kendra, it may be less than 10 rupees. So this type of things, I think more Jan Aushadhi Kendra should be opened. So these are some of my points. Health is such
Sorry,
a subject.
there's a question that you can answer very quickly from Anthony Colonor. COVID pandemic taught us that strengthened district hospitals are the apex of the comprehensive healthcare and is the most important need at the moment. Why is there no budget allocation for that?
There is some budget allocation.
Even I thought there is some budget allocation for that. That's correct.
Yeah, there is some budget.
Okay, so that is factually incorrect. We leave that. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left for the discussion. I just want to let our guests know that we'll come back to you for 30-second closing comments. Your biggest surprises, the thing that you want to say the most, the thing that you're most happy about or sad about, the thing that confuses you and you'd love to see how it pans out. Whatever you want to say, but 30 seconds. But Mohinder Pal Singh, I just want to come to you. We had asked you a question: US, Russia, India, and then Atmanirbhar. In that intersection, how are we going to see this year pan out, and particularly with those two threats of China and Pakistan?
Thank you very much. See, traditionally, Russia was our main supplier as far as the military hardware was concerned for many, many decades. Now, the time when we have both the markets available to us, of course, we would go for the best available choice. One of the very important examples is the latest missile system, S-400, which we have bought from Russia. There was equal contender from the US, Third, THAAD systems. So we would go for the best available. On the other hand, when we had to buy our howitzers, we chose M777. So we have a wider choice. But what is the best choice? Atmanirbhar. In the long term, from being a dependent on the developed countries for weapon systems, we will develop our own weapon system with the
Yeah,
fourth
but
largest
is there
economy.
enough confidence, sir? Because is there enough
Exactly.
confidence in the domestic market? You might be putting in an X
Exactly.
amount of money.
Exactly. That is what is going to build up now when the private sector comes in with DRDO in the R&D.
And
As
you're
I mentioned
confident
in my
it can
earlier talk, all weapon systems take time to develop. We have finally developed our own aircraft carrier, Vikrant.
Okay.
Now on the verge of starting a new one.
Yeah.
So the government has made a start. It has incorporated the private sector, and I think time is not far, just probably a decade away, when we'll be proud indigenous manufacturers of our own weapon systems.
Okay.
So with that, I would like to end this.
But just very quickly, sir.
Yeah.
Is there any doubt that that will not happen in your mind?
Absolutely not.
Oh,
I don't think that. It will happen. Indigenous Atmanirbhar Bharat will develop. Our weapon systems will come up. We have had small arms.
I'm talking about the time frame within which. I'm talking about, will it be slightly slower? Even though there's a push, there'll be a lag, anything of that. Do you have any doubt about that?
See, I feel that the start has been made. The start has been made. Even the drones, which the finance minister mentioned, AI and drone also being incorporated. The future of weapon system is technology.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. It's interesting you said that. This is the greatest takeaways are that this is a budget that may have played safe. There's no tax deduction for taxpayers, and the focus on capital expenditure, digital infrastructure. There have been, the words that were trending on social media platforms, very funnily enough, was salaried, cryptocurrency, loss, 30% tax. Those are the kind of words that were used by people. Okay, final comments. We have only 2-3 minutes left. Arvindji, why don't you take it away? Let's see if we can all keep it to 30 seconds so that we finish at 7 o'clock.
I think people just don't realize that there is a digital revolution starting. And I do need a few seconds to explain why, because people don't seem to understand this. Every part of medicine from, except for actual surgery, can be done by telemedicine, diagnosis and treatment. Can you imagine first the transport cost, the cost of somebody, poor guy in the rural areas going to a primary, secondary, tertiary health center, all that on telemedicine, on the phone, in his house, or maybe a service provider. Education, it has barely started. There are like 5 or 10 educational startups. Again, the quality of service which we are used to in Delhi, Bombay, Chennai, can be delivered once this revolution is underway into the home of the rural housewife, whether it's a SC or a ST. The third one, people just don't understand. Women who are not allowed to go out of the house, or in rural areas, they can't even step out. They'll be able to work from home when this digital revolution, this is the start of a big revolution. Please, that should be the word on Twitter from today onwards.
Okay, I'll tell Twitter that. I'll write it right now. Charan Singh ji, your latest take, and just help me with something. My problem here is that there seems to be, from everything that's been said by the both of you particularly, a disproportionate dependence on that hope, that the supply side formula. And particularly when you've had Omicron happen, Delta happen, where this pandemic has resulted in becoming an endemic. It is not ended. A new variant has come and shocked us all again and again. So could it have been a mixed bag? That's my question. That's my feeling as you give your closing remark.
Well, my feeling is that the budget has ensured continuity. It is a good budget. Continuity is good. Certainty is good that it has ensured. My second point is that it has also ensured demonetization has not been forgotten. It has discussed about tax evasion even now. Digitalization helps in ensuring transparency in transactions. Also, one of the reasons GST is showing such good results is because of digitization. So I think the government is making an effort in a big way to cleanse the system and ensure modernity and transparency in the accounting in the corporate sector. While it is doing so, It's inviting the corporate sector also to shoulder greater responsibility. It is saying I'm making an investment, there's going to be crowding in too. So to that extent, I think shoulder to shoulder public-private partnership is showing a very good trajectory in days to come.
All right. Thank you, sir. We have two questions that are propped up as we take in the final comments. Ashok ji, this question is, you can answer it in a short way and then move to your closing remark. Will not subsidy in urea be a part of AMS? Can we provide that as per, I don't know what that means, but it says Uruguay round. This is from Ayanendu Sanyal. You'll have to unmute yourself.
I can understand the AMS is the aggregate measure of support, which is under the umbrella boss, and there are certain restrictions, but it does not qualify. The best solution is you pay the subsidy of fertilizer on per hectare basis, because we have to appreciate all farmers don't require urea or subsidy, and those who don't have access to irrigation, they don't require, because then it's not useful. So we have to appreciate this. And my final concluding remark is that this budget is forward looking, and it's not have any populist measure, and it assures me at least that I and the nation is a growth propelled kind of budget, and will have accelerate the economic growth and development. And
okay, let me ask you a simple question. An objective farmer upset with the Modi government for the farmer policy that was reversed and apologized for, will they be happy with this?
I feel yes, because he has provided enough in this.
Okay, got it.
Yes,
got it. Okay, that's good enough. And Rattan Ji, your final comment. There is also a question for you before you give the final comment. A quick question. Health sector. This is from Anthony Colonor. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Health sector capacity to increase absorption of fund allocation requires better management system. Currently, 245,000 specialists, consultants, and techno managerials are on contractual workers. So also 9 lakh ASHA workers under NHM. Why not regularize them and boost budget expenditure for a good input?
I think he has raised a valid point. So it is not only the health sector where contractual workers are there. In education, in other sectors, also in rural development, everywhere now contractual services, contractuals are there. Yes. In the case of, say, ASHAs, there are around 10 lakh ASHAs, but they're not regular wage earners. They draw a incentive based on the work performed. So I think there should have been some benefit to those. At present, they earn only around 2,000 rupees a month at most. So if their incentive should have been increased, it would have been better.
Okay.
So
your final comment?
Yeah, final comment is this. I will say that in the budget, whatever new initiatives, IT initiatives have been announced, they should be implemented. They should be launched as soon as possible. And further, because efficiently manage the existing health facilities. The main problem has been that we have a good spread of health facilities, but they don't function efficiently. So I would say that to make them functional, this depends on the state governments rather than on the central government. Central government can provide handholding. So they should be efficiently managed by providing adequate manpower, equipments, drugs, consumables. So if those are, I think, efficiently managed, it will go a long way to serve the poor in the rural areas as well as in the semi-urban areas and urban areas.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I'm cutting you short here. We're running out of time. Colonel Mohindpal Singh, your final take.
think the move is in the right direction. The allocations are timely, and the Atmanirbhar Bharat effort in the defense production will go a long way. My only take is, in addition to this, the technology partnerships has to increase in terms of developing smart weapons. So the new platforms which we talk of R&D should be the smart platforms which should be our focus.
Got it. Okay. I'll leave it at that. I think we've got enough. Anilji, is that okay? I just want to say that Vishal and Anilji made all of this possible, made it happen from the policy circle. To all my guests, to all our guests, thank you so much for joining us. I have so many questions, but I'm going to have to pause it right now because I'll explode otherwise. I think it's interesting that we have another discussion tomorrow, so you can all join on, whoever wants to ask more questions. I think I took in almost all the questions that were there, and I'm sorry if I missed a question or two. Feedback is welcome. My Twitter handle is open. You can message me. You can message the policy group. Feedback is always welcome. Further questions will be picked up from there and sent on emails to these guests if you want answers and then relayed to you. I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you esteemed minds who have not just made a lot of things clear for me, but also confused me. Thank you so much for that.
Confusion is a sign of intellectualism. So
Thank
that is
you.
fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Amitoj. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.